A thick fog hung over the fjord as the four warriors continued against the current, each stroke of the oars breaking the silence of the dawn. They were no ordinary men, but chosen among the best for a mission that would go down in the sagas. The spear of Odin, a weapon that pierced giants and sealed the fate of the gods, was lost in unknown lands. It was said that whoever wielded it would have absolute power over the kingdoms of men and gods. But fate always exacts its price, and a mission like this would never be simple. The journey required more than strength. It would require courage, cunning, and the ability to face the impossible. The icy wind cut like blades, and the ravens flew restlessly above the Drekka, as if they sensed that these men were destined for something greater than they imagined. The ancient maps were uncertain, and the stories about the unknown territory spoke of lands where nature itself fought against intruders. Creatures that did not belong to the world of men lurked in the darkness, and nomadic tribes guarded secrets that were not meant to be discovered. But retreat was not an option. Their names would echo through the centuries, or be forgotten like so many others who had defied fate. Each of them had their own reason for accepting this journey. For one, the search for glory. For another, an oath made to a father killed in battle. The third wanted to prove that the gods still walked among men. And the last, well, the last knew a truth that the others did not. There was more to the game than just a weapon. There were forces that would rather the spear remained lost forever. But the four warriors did not know this yet. They did not know that, by stepping into the forgotten land, they would be awakening something much older than the war between gods and giants itself. Since time immemorial, when the world was still young and gods walked among men, the clan of the Frostwolves has forged its warriors. Among the many who were born under the wolf's crest, 4 stood out for their valor, courage, and unwavering loyalty. Nud, Njal, Dag, and Bridger grew up together, training from childhood under the watchful eye of war veterans, learning to wield swords, spears, and axes before they could even carry their own armor. Their stories were different, but their destinies were intertwined like the threads of a saga tapestry, woven by fate itself. Nud was the leader, not by choice, but because the others followed him without hesitation. From a young age, he demonstrated a sharp mind and an ability to anticipate the enemy's moves that made him a natural strategist. During a raid on a coastal village protected by a wooden fort, it was he who devised a plan to lure the local warriors into an ambush, ensuring victory without losing too many men to his clan. With an imposing presence, his cold eyes and firm voice inspired respect. He was not the strongest, nor the fastest, but his intelligence in combat and his sense of duty were unquestionable. There was a seriousness about him that few dared to challenge, and his sword had already claimed enough lives to engrave his name in the runes of destiny. At his side was Njal, a colossus of flesh and bone, as strong as a mountain bear. His body was marked by scars from past battles, trophies of wars that he had not only survived, but won. When he was still just a young man, he saved his village by crushing the skull of a Saxon warrior with his bare hands, a feat that earned him respect among the older warriors. His axe was an extension of his body, and each blow he delivered could fell a man in full armor. Despite his brutal appearance, Njal was as loyal as a brother, and would protect his comrades to his dying breath. During the siege of Jorvik Keep, he held the line alone while the others retreated, ensuring that his allies could regroup. There was a legend among the warriors that Njal felt no pain, but the truth was that he simply refused to be overcome by it. Dag was the most intelligent of them all, the master of maps, the one who read the stars as if they were letters on parchment. His role in the group went beyond just fighting. He was the one who guided, planned, and understood dangers before they even appeared. Born the son of a merchant and a woman from the eastern lands, Dag had a vast knowledge of other cultures and ways of warfare. He studied with the elders, learned foreign languages, and understood the secrets of the sea. On a perilous mission across a stormy sea, it was Dag who charted the course that avoided the treacherous rocks that had claimed so many ships before them. He was not a brutal fighter like Ingjal, but he knew where to strike an opponent to bring him down with one well-aimed blow. His weapons were cunning and foresight, and without him, the group would have met its end long ago. Finally, there was Birger, the youngest and most impulsive of the group. He had grown up listening to the stories of the Skalds and had always longed to have his own saga told around the clan fires. His spirit was indomitable, and his courage bordered on recklessness. During an attack on a Frankish castle, it was he who scaled the walls alone to open the gates from the inside, ensuring his people's victory. His speed and skill with a dagger were legendary, and few could keep up with him in combat. But despite his prowess, he was still young and often did not measure the risks of his actions. However, his presence was vital to the group. He was the one who kept hope alive, who made jokes even in the darkest moments, and who reminded the others that no matter how dark the battle, there was always a reason to fight. These four warriors had fought side by side in countless battles, each trusting the other as if they were blood brothers. Together, they had crossed unknown lands, faced entire armies, weathered storms, and challenged creatures that seemed to have come out of legend. But now, they were about to embark on a journey unlike any other. The mission entrusted to them was too dangerous for even the most experienced warriors of the clan, but if there was anyone capable of completing it, it was them. They said that the blade of Odin had been lost since the great war between the gods and giants. Whoever found it would have power over the realms of men and gods. But the path to it was not just a simple hunt. It was a test imposed by the gods themselves. Dark creatures lurked in the unexplored territories. Armies of merciless warriors patrolled the borders, and storms worthy of Thor's wrath awaited those who dared to cross the unknown. Nud knew that this would be his greatest test. Ingjal sharpened his axe and prepared himself for the challenges that lay ahead. Dag studied the maps and looked for signs of ancient tales of the route. And Birger, with a glint in his eye, knew that this would be the journey that would turn their names into legend. Without looking back, the four warriors set off under the pale moonlight, heading into the unknown. Little did they know that they were about to enter a battle far greater than anything they had ever faced before. The journey into legend had begun, and only the worthy would survive. The dawn of that day brought a call that would change the fate of four warriors. Nud, Ingjal, Dag, and Birger were summoned to the Jarl's great hall, where the smoke from the braziers mingled with the smell of mead and roasting meat. The news came like Thor's thunder. Odin's legendary spear, Gungnir, had been seen in unknown lands, and only the bravest could set out to claim it. The Jarl, a man of imposing presence, explained that the spear had been lost during the war between the gods and giants, and that, according to the Skalds, whoever wielded it would have dominion over the realms of men and gods. This was no simple expedition. It was a mission that could change the course of history. Nud, ever the strategist, asked sharp questions about the veracity of the information and the dangers they would encounter. Ingjal, for his part, listened in silence, his fist clenched on the handle of his axe, ready for the challenge. Dag, the master of maps, was already visualizing possible routes, calculating the risks, while Birger, the youngest, could barely contain his excitement. When the audience ended, the four looked at each other. There was no hesitation in their eyes. They would set off at first light. Preparations began immediately. The longship, named Northern Storm, was reinforced for the long journey. Shields were renewed, sails mended, and supplies stored. Barrels of mead and dried meat were loaded, as well as furs to withstand the cold of the unknown lands. Nud supervised everything with a watchful eye. while Njal tested the new double axes he would carry. Dag spread his maps on an oak table, plotting possible routes and foreseeing natural challenges. Berger, ever restless, sharpened his short blade, imagining the glories that would come. Weapons were the extension of their souls. Nud, the leader, carried a broadsword, a gift from his father, with runes carved along its edge. Njal relied on his twin axes, whose weight he wielded masterfully. Dag had a yew bow, capable of piercing light armor at great distances, and a curved dagger for close combat. Berger, young and quick, preferred a short sword and a dagger, weapons that favored his speed. When the morning of departure arrived, the clan gathered at the harbor to bid farewell. Women and children offered blessings to the warriors, while the elders murmured prayers to the gods. The Jarl gave Nud a small iron amulet, saying that it had been forged in the fires of Muspelheim and that it would provide protection against dark forces. The longship glided across the water, propelled by strong oars and favorable winds. With their eyes fixed on the horizon, the four warriors set off into the unknown. The four warriors set out with the promise of the unknown ahead and the vastness of the ocean surrounding them. The Drekka, robust and adorned with carvings of serpents and protective runes, cut through the icy waters like an ancient beast. Each of the warriors occupied a role essential to the survival of the expedition. Nud, the leader, kept his eyes fixed on the horizon, guiding them with the wisdom of a warrior who knew both the sea and battle. Njal, with arms as strong as oak trunks, handled the oars with skill, ensuring that the vessel would withstand the tides and storms. Dag, with his goatskin maps, analyzed each route in detail, deciphering hidden signs in the stars and currents. Berger, the youngest, carried the responsibility of learning and serving, always attentive, absorbing the lessons of his brothers in arms. The first few days were calm, with the winds blowing favorably and the gods seemingly blessing the journey. They sang old songs, told stories of their past glories, and kept their spirits high. But this calm did not last long. In the second week, the sea showed its true face. Colossal waves rose before them like walls of ice, and cutting winds beat against them like invisible blades. The storm raged for 3 days and 3 nights, testing the endurance of every man on board. Njal, with his strength, held the helm steady while Nud shouted orders over the roar of the wind. Dag tried to keep the maps dry and intact, while Berger, fighting fear, helped to tie down the supplies so they would not be swept overboard. When the storm finally dissipated, the warriors emerged exhausted but victorious. The Drekka, though damaged, was still intact. They knew they were entering a journey that would test them at every turn. For the rest of the first month, they faced constant challenges: hunger that crept in when the fishing failed, thirst when the barrels of sweetened water emptied faster than expected, and the watchful eyes of unknown creatures that seemed to stalk them from the depths. But something else troubled them. Strange dreams and visions haunted their nights. Images of ancient battles, of gods and giants in conflict, of a shadow looming over the land. Was it a warning, or just the weight of the mission creeping into their minds? The warriors knew that this was only the first stage. The real challenge lay ahead, hidden among the mysteries of the unknown land that awaited them. The following month would bring even more trials, and they would have to be prepared for anything. The second month of the journey brought even more severe challenges. The relentless cold of the open sea gave way to a new threat: hunger. The supplies they had carried since the beginning of the journey had dwindled to almost nothing. The barrels of mead were dry. The pieces of salted meat had been consumed to the last shred, and the remaining flour had already gone moldy. With no other choice, the 4 warriors decided to seek dry land before hunger weakened them to the point where they would become easy prey for any enemy who crossed their path. It was then that they spotted an island shrouded in dense fog, with mountains in the background and a dense forest stretching to the horizon. It seemed an unexplored place, wild and promising. The Drekker glided through the calm waters to the shore, and as soon as they touched the ground, they realized how ancient the land seemed. Huge trees stood like ancient sentinels, and the silence was interrupted only by the whisper of the wind and the distant song of unknown birds. There, they could hunt and replenish their supplies before resuming their journey. Wasting no time, they set up camp near the beach, where the terrain was more open and allowed a clear view of potential threats. Nud organized the distribution of tasks, and Jal and Berger would go out hunting. Dag would be responsible for exploring the surroundings and looking for water sources, while Nud would reinforce the camp and prepare a fire to cook what they managed to catch. The hunting was productive for the first few days, and Jal returned with a wild boar on his shoulders, and Berger managed to kill a deer with his spear. They ate well for the first time in weeks, regaining strength and restoring their spirits. For 4 days, everything went smoothly. The environment, although hostile, seemed to harbor no great threats. But on the 5th day, as they were preparing to leave, the jungle revealed its true danger. As night fell, as they gathered around the fire, a strange sound echoed through the forest. A hurried rustling followed by barely audible murmurs. Nud was the first to stand up, placing his hand on the hilt of his sword, and Jal clenched his fists, ready to crush anything that emerged from the shadows. Berger, ever restless, sensed the tension in the air and drew his short blade. Dag, who had been checking the maps until then, looked up just in time to see the first projectile slice through the air. A shower of arrows came from the trees, fast and merciless. The group reacted instinctively, rolling away from the fire to avoid being easy targets. Dag screamed as one of the arrows embedded itself in his left arm, the impact strong enough to knock him to the ground. But there was no time for pain. The attackers appeared soon after. They were men with red-painted skin, wearing animal skins and carrying crude but lethal weapons. Their eyes shone with the fury of warriors who fanatically protected their territory. They advanced like a violent wave, spears and axes in hand, trying to surround the 4 Vikings. Nud reacted first, drawing his sword and cutting down the first enemy who approached. The blow was clean, precise, and Jal, seeing Dag wounded, roared like a beast and ran to the front line, grabbing one of the attackers by the neck and smashing his skull against a nearby rock. Berger, agile as ever, spun in the air and plunged his blade into the throat of another enemy before he had a chance to strike. The battle was quick and brutal. Within minutes, the ground was stained with blood, the bodies of the natives lying around the camp. Dag leaned on Nud to stand, his face pale from loss of blood, but still standing. "We may not have much time before they return with reinforcements," he muttered through clenched teeth. Nud nodded, realizing that the island, which had once seemed like a blessing, had become a deadly trap. Without hesitation, they hurriedly broke camp. They loaded what they could, took Dag to the boat, and pushed the Drekker back into the sea before any more enemies could appear. Torches appeared in the forest minutes later, indicating that the natives were gathering for a new attack. But it was too late. The boat was moving quickly away, gliding through the dark waters, leaving the makeshift battlefield behind. When they were finally far enough away, Nud took one last look at the island, etching into his memory the lesson he had learned. It was not only the sea that held dangers. The mainland was also a constant battlefield, and any mistake could mean death. The 2nd month had come to an end, and the journey was far from over. After the brutal attack on the island of the red-painted natives, the 4 warriors spent weeks sailing aimlessly. The open sky and the unforgiving sea tested them each day as they fought against raging storms and treacherous winds. Time was beginning to become a silent enemy. Each day without progress was one day less supplies, one more day of physical and mental exhaustion. But then, on the 20th day of the 3rd month, fate sent them a sign. It was a clear morning when, on the horizon, they spotted an island unlike any they had ever seen. Whereas the previous lands had been wild and unexplored, this one bore clear signs of civilization. A stone lighthouse stood majestically on the coast, tall and sturdy like a silent guardian. But what most caught the attention of Dag, the group's strategist and cartographer, was a peculiar detail. As the sun rose toward noon, the lighthouse's shadow lengthened into the exact shape of a spear. "This can't be a coincidence," Dag said, even though his arm was still bandaged from the arrow he had received weeks before. Nud, who had been watching with keen eyes, agreed. "If there's a sign, there's a story. If there's a story, there's something buried here." Without hesitation, they steered the Drekka to the shore. The landing was cautious, unlike the previous times. They had already learned that any land could hide dangers. But to their surprise, the island didn't seem inhospitable. Ruins of an ancient village were scattered along the hillside, as if this place had once been an important point in the past, now forgotten by time. The stone houses were worn, but some still resisted the salty ocean wind. "An abandoned place, or a trap waiting to be activated," murmured Berger, ever suspicious. Nud ordered that they set up a more structured camp this time. They couldn't afford another hasty retreat like on the last island. They chose a high spot near the lighthouse to ensure a clear view of the surroundings. They built rudimentary barricades with wood and stones, reinforced their tents, and posted lookouts to avoid unpleasant surprises. With a secure shelter, they were able, for the first time in a long time, to prepare a more elaborate search plan. Dag studied the old maps and cross-referenced information with the stories they had heard about Odin's spear. If the lighthouse was there to mark something, then there must be records or inscriptions hidden somewhere. If it were a king, a warrior, or a god hiding something of value, where would they leave their mark? Angel asked, sharpening his axe as he stared at the horizon. Dag smiled. If the builders of this lighthouse wanted someone to see this sign, then there is something else nearby. And we will find it. The hunt for the relic had finally begun. Weeks passed in the midst of the relentless search. Each ruin investigated, each stone turned over, and each clue analyzed only led to more doubts. The lighthouse with the spear shadow had been a clear sign, but the truth was buried somewhere still unknown. The wear and tear was beginning to take its toll. Their patience was waning. The island, once a refuge, now seemed like an invisible cage, keeping them trapped in uncertainty. Then, on a day of exploring deep into the forests to the east, everything changed. It was Njal who heard it first. The sound of light, careful footsteps, as if they were ghosts, gliding through the trees. The warrior's instincts immediately flared. Before he could alert the others, something silenced the surroundings, a sudden, sharp buzz, followed by the sound of a net falling. In a matter of seconds, the four were pulled to the ground by meticulously placed traps. From above, among the branches, the figures of those responsible appeared. Dark-robed men and women, sun-scorched skin, eyes as watchful as a predator. Nomads, but not just any tribe. They were hunters of invaders, defenders of a territory no map marked. Nud tried to stand, but a spear was pointed at his throat. "You have crossed forbidden lands," one of the nomads said, his voice firm and emotionless. They were taken to a village hidden among the hills, where flames flickered from low fires and animal hide tents formed a circle around a larger building, probably the meeting place of the leaders. They were kept under constant guard, given no food, nor allowed to speak to one another. The tension in the air was sharp. Every glance exchanged was filled with suspicion and judgment. On the second night of their captivity, Nud realized something. These nomads had not killed them outright, which meant they wanted something from them. Perhaps they believed that the Vikings were more than just raiders. And then came the opportunity. On the third night, when most of the warriors had retired, only a few sleepy watchmen remained around. It was at that moment that Dag, even with his injured arm, whispered, "If we don't leave now, they might decide that we are worthless." Using sharp stones they found on the ground, they cut the bonds with patience and precision. Nud signaled to the others and, without hesitation, they advanced. Enjal felled one of the watchmen with a sharp blow to the back of the head, while Burja, always agile, slipped through the shadows unseen. In a matter of minutes, they were out of the village. But before they rushed to the camp, something caught their attention. An old and worn stone structure stood partially hidden by the vegetation. It looked like an entrance, but to where? As they approached, they saw what appeared to be a cave carved into the rock. But what really made Nud frown was the silhouette that appeared in the moonlight. Behind the cave, a mountain rose up, its shape resembling the outline of a spear pointing towards the heavens. The second clue was right in front of them. Whatever they were looking for, it was closer than ever. The cavern ahead of Injal and his companions seemed dark and threatening, but their leadership spirit did not waver. With each step, the sound of water drops echoed against the stone walls, and the damp smell of the mountain's interior permeated the air, heavy and cold. They knew they were approaching something big, something that would change the course of their journey. But the darkness, as always, brought with it hidden dangers. As they advanced, a sense of unease grew in their hearts. Something was not right. The silence of the cavern, once deep and absolute, was interrupted by a distant roar, reverberating through the rocks like distant thunder. Dag's eyes shone with a mixture of curiosity and warning. "Get ready," he said in a deep voice, his tone clear as a command. When they reached the end of the tunnel, the cavern opened up into a large room. In the center, an immense mountain of stone rose up, challenging any who dared to face it. But before they could even consider climbing, a low, ominous sound came from the shadows. Suddenly, huge wolves, their eyes glowing like embers, emerged from the crevices of the rock, their sharp fangs reflecting the dim light of the cave. This was a den of wolves, and they were not about to let intruders pass. The battle was fierce. The wolves' sharp claws sliced through the air, and their bites were swift and relentless. Every sword strike from Injal and his companions sliced through the air, but the wolves were agile and unfazed. Smelling the blood and the pressure of each attack, they fought with everything they had. But the savagery of the fight had left its mark. Minor but painful wounds covered their bodies, cuts and scrapes that, while not serious, were reminders of the fury of the battle. After the last wolf fell, the survivors were exhausted but still standing. Silence fell once more, broken only by the sound of their labored breathing. Enjal, even with the blood staining his clothes and the pain in his wounds, stared at the mountain in front of him. The summit still seemed distant, but he knew they had overcome a great obstacle. With a determined expression, he raised his hand, his eyes burning with the intensity of the vision. "We are on the right path," he shouted, his voice reverberating through the cave and echoing off the mountains. "Nothing can stop us. The true journey begins now." And with that, his companions, although injured, found strength in their leader's words. They began to climb, facing the mountain not only with their physical strength, but with the certainty that each challenge brought them closer to their great destiny. The next challenge awaited them, and the story continued. Did you like this story? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next epic sagas. The journey continues.